Hi guys, and welcome to another episode of Marketing the Madness, where every week I interview people on the future of tech, digital, and of course marketing. And today I've got quite the special episode for you because I'm actually interviewing, I don't know, I want to say my old boss, but I think he was like my boss's boss's boss. So I was that far down the ladder at this point in my career. Very long time ago, obviously, like, I was basically a baby. The fantastic Jason Trout. Now, Jason is now MD of EMEA at a fantastic company called Crimtan, which I'm going to let him tell you about in the episode in a minute. But we unpack so much goodness. Now, of course, we're sitting at around Christmas time, so we couldn't do this episode, especially because Jason is, I don't know, king of the advertising world, I'm going to say. We talk about our favourite Christmas ads. We talk about some of the psychology about Christmas ads. We unpack the John Lewis and the Waitrose Christmas ad. I'm going to keep saying Christmas ads. It feels like I've said it about 10 times already. As well as, I guess, how the world of advertising has changed, what the future of the world of advertising looks like in a world led by AI technology, and what that means for a lot of us who are running agencies and helping the world of advertising get ahead. So, without further ado and without me talking too much, I'm going to let you get into the specialness of this week's episode because I promise it is a corker. So, hello, Jason.
Hello.
And welcome to Marketing the Madness. This feels actually really exciting. So, for those of you who don't know this already, which will be most of you, me and Jason worked together, oh my God, how many years ago?
20-ish years ago, I would say. Yeah.
It must be. Well, it was definitely before I was pregnant and had my daughter, and she's nearly 18. So we were just working out, it's her half birthday in about a week or two, so she'll be 17 and a half.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, that is a very, very, very long time ago. So we worked together in advertising, which it was such a fun time, wasn't it?
It was.
At the time, it used to be like a really fun, entertaining, like, I don't know, just world of crazy fun. It was such a fun place to work. Like, I used to be selling I started in the really bottom of the pile bit, selling the classified ads.
That was great.
The dodgy ads at the back of the magazine, basically, guys. But it was such a fun environment to work in. And my clients were big. I was working with like agencies from like MediaCom and used to get them to take them for lunch at the Ivy. And it was like the classical days of advertising.
It was.
And yeah, and I miss it a lot. Well, to be fair, I think the world that I work in now still is very, very similar. I get to do lots of events and very similar things. So we've known each other for a long time.
Yep.
In today's podcast, we're actually going to discuss, I guess, how the world has changed a little bit over the years in the world of advertising. You now work in a very different advertising space.
Yep.
Well, not different. It's evolved over time, but predominantly in TV. So tell me, like, in between 20 years ago and now, I do know because we've stayed in touch, but tell me what's been happening and everything about Jason that we all need to know.
Okay. So I started in TV, and in many ways I'm back in TV because I think in the digital space, the big emerging thing is, well, driven by streaming TV, actually driven by COVID. Like, COVID all of a sudden made everyone watch more stuff, right? And sign up to Netflix and Amazon Prime or whatever it was, right? And particularly young people, massive shift away from traditional into digital. So for me, I feel like I've done a full 360, gone through lots of digital evolutions. And even when I was at EMAP, the last role that I had at EMAP really was building out the digital capabilities. So that was for magazine brands 20 years ago. So, and I've really kind of stayed pretty much in that area, but been on different sides of it. So I spent a little bit of time on the agency side. I've spent time on the media owner side. But I think one thing is absolutely true, which is, everything that you knew yesterday, a big chunk of that becomes irrelevant because things are changing so fast. And I think as long as you're curious, I think if you have sort of curiosity in you and you're not fazed by ambiguity, then I think, it's a fantastic business to be in.
Yeah.
But I think, some people they like their job spec to be just so, and like everything nice and neat in a box, and that's fine. But I think, in the kind of industry that we're in, and particularly at the moment, which is hugely disruptive, if you can't deal with ambiguity, I think it's tough, and I think people find it tough. So in some ways, I think me being curious about what's next, what's going to happen next, how does it impact people, how does it impact the jobs that we do, I find really interesting rather than scary. And I think some people find it scary.
Yeah, well, it can feel scary, but at the same time, like you say, it's exciting, and things are changing, I think, because of AI even faster than it ever has. There's always, I was chatting to someone else earlier just about the amount of different channels there are, and back when I was selling advertising space in FHM, like there weren't that many. I don't even know when we worked together if like social media existed. I think
Not really.
Facebook sort of started about that sort of time. So I remember a girlfriend of mine being like, "You need to go," and we had MySpace, but it was literally just starting, like hardly there at all. So really, the only ways brands could connect with their audience, not the only, but sort of to me, there were like three big ones. There was advertising in magazines, like we had, or in publications. There was obviously TV advertising, outdoor advertising, and then from I guess more of a direct, there was like flyering and email marketing, and those were kind of the main buckets. Like when we were pitching up against other people, we weren't just pitching up against people that were spending in magazines. We were selling different magazines. Not FHM, other male titles that I won't talk about. But we were also pitching up against people were spending in, I don't know, on outdoor or other places. But it's so much more fragmented now. There's more channels because of social media, and also almost some of those more traditional channels. I don't know. You could tell me probably because you've been leading a lot of businesses in this space, but feels like they've had a lot of their share taken away from them in some ways, or maybe not.
Yeah. When you think about like radio, for example, radio's always been around 5-6% of total spend. So back in 2000, it was 5 or 6%. Now it's 5 or 6%. Right? It's just brilliant at just remaining relevant and important. And in some ways, audio has grown, right? Because you've now got podcasts, you've now got more content that's packaged up that you can advertise in. So audio has become, has remained really important. I think people just like the fact that it doesn't require a huge amount of effort to consume it, but it's a brilliant way to consume content. If I go on holiday, I love listening to podcasts. I love listening to audiobooks rather than read it, because if I start reading a book, I fall asleep. Whereas if I'm listening to it, it's just easier and it's portable, and I think you can do other things while you're listening to radio. But I think things like newspapers, obviously, big decline in physical newspapers, even the free newspapers now. There's far fewer of them, but they print once every week or sometimes once every 2 weeks. So that's definitely been in decline. But the things that we watch, there's been a massive increase in the amount of time that we spend watching studio quality content. Like, so you think about it, this sounds a bit old, but back in the day, film stars made films and they were big box office film stars. And then it was probably someone like Kiefer Sutherland who filmed 24, right? 24 was probably one of the first series where the quality of the production was as good, if not better, than a film for the first time, right? And that was like, oh my God, this stuff's really, really good. And, I remember literally watching episodes 24 back to back.
Yeah.
Because you couldn't stop, right?
Yeah.
You couldn't stop watching it.
Yeah.
It was that good. So I think the amount of money that's gone into the production side of it has certainly driven, I think, the kind of content that we watch. And we will have more choice, right? We have more choice. So it becomes, sometimes the cognitive load of having to decide what to watch or what to listen to is quite intense, right?
Yeah.
And there's more and more technology that's going to make that easier for you. But I think, when I look back 20 years, you're absolutely right. Big shows on ITV, Coronation Street was getting like 20 million homes. Now it's probably under 10, it's probably 8 or 9, something like that. So that's halved.
Yeah.
So can you still buy mass audiences, or do you have to buy lots of omni-channel campaigns to be successful? It's probably the latter. That's probably our, isn't it?
Yeah, it has really, really changed, I think, over the years. And I'm kind of happy that it has. We've got more choice, haven't we? But it can feel quite overwhelming as a consumer. Well, and as an advertiser and as an agency who's helping with all this kind of stuff. Tell me, so just so people have context, obviously you said earlier you're kind of in the TV world. Tell me about, so your current job role, what you do, what Crimtan does, and I guess what your ideas for the future therefore are.
So Crimtan is, I think there's 4 things that describe Crimtan. Right? Crimtan is global. So we have capability, we have offices, we have people in most of the major markets around the world. We're managed service. So in a world where more and more technology is becoming self-serve, if you think about, if you want to advertise on Meta or YouTube, like you just log into their platforms and you do whatever you need to do. We believe that there is an increasing market for companies and businesses that don't want to have to do that themselves, because either they don't have the expertise or it's very expensive to do, right? It's really expensive to run big programmatic teams. So we have built a global capability to offer that to clients. So we're global, we're managed service, we're programmatic. So anything that can be bought programmatically. So that could be display, could be online video, could be CTV, could be digital out of home, could be audio. More and more advertising is programmatic, and programmatic. All programmatic really is just the pipes that connect the buyer side to the sell side. So it's not particularly complicated, but getting those pipes to work and getting the connections in place is quite a big job and takes a lot of time and effort, and you constantly have to keep your technology up to date for GDPR reasons as much as technical capabilities. So we offer that, and we see ourselves very much as a partnership, right? So we're not looking to replace anyone. We don't look to replace agencies, and we don't look to replace clients, but we want to be there to partner with them to make them more efficient, more effective, able to do the things that they want to do better. And included in that is planning, strategy, creative. We firmly believe that if you're a viewer or a consumer, you don't give a shit about any of the technology that sits behind it, right? What you see is an ad.
Yeah.
Right? And you make all your decisions based on the ad. Be that, oh my God, that's the worst ad I've ever seen, or it's so bad I've ignored it, or I don't even see it, or oh my God, that was amazing. Right? Everything that sits behind that is irrelevant to you. So that's why, we believe that actually the creative piece where you've got to try and cut through now is so important. And I think what digital, and when I say digital, I mean sort of traditional digital, which is display and online video. The creative bar for that has just got lower and lower and lower because you've got unlimited supply. Right? You've got absolutely unlimited supply. And whenever you've got unlimited supply, I think the natural inclination is to just lob stuff out there and see what sticks. And that often means that you get really, really poor creative executions trying to stick their heads above the parapet, but it's cheap, and cheap doesn't always mean good or effective, as we know.
No.
So I think that, the creative piece is super important, and it's always been important. If you look at any research, it will always tell you that the component parts of a really successful campaign, at least 40% is always the creative. If the creative sucks, you could buy the best slots in a World Cup final with a terrible ad. It actually probably has a detrimental effect. So, a shit ad is always going to be a shit ad, but, great creative can propel.
Well, on that, and seeing as this is going out amidst Christmas, and you're sat in a lovely red chair, which kind of, feels a bit Father Christmassy, with your Christmas jumper. Oh my God, so should have worn Christmas jumpers today. Why did we not do that? But I do feel like we can't escape today's podcast without talking about some of the Christmas creative,
right,
because it's such a thing. We all look forward to the Christmas ads coming out. In fact, my client was, my very first client at Street was part of the same business that did the John Lewis Christmas ad. So I used to get to see it a day before the rest of the world, which was really cool. Yeah. So it was a fun client to have. They did like a big show, like a bit like the whole building. We all just stopped the day before and got to see it, because obviously the creatives that were in the building had created the ad, which was quite cool. So that was always like a little fun early Christmas celebration. But I mean, John Lewis are the famous ones.
Yeah.
Dare we talk about our favourite, the worst and the favourite Christmas ads that we've seen? It doesn't even have to be this year, but I mean, I don't know. Do you feel like John Lewis have missed the mark this year? Thoughts?
Yeah. I
don't hate us, John Lewis, because I know a lot of you listen to this podcast.
I think it's quite. I think it is quite good.
I like it. I don't love it.
Yeah, I think I'm the same.
I like it. I don't love it. I get it. I get there's a lot of cleverness behind the creative and the campaign. Personally, like in terms of probably a lot of their target audience who are spending a lot of money in John Lewis, they've been quite smart because they know it's us in our sort of 40s that are going to be buying a lot of the Christmas presents for kids and spending probably in terms of their target audience, where a huge part of their spend is going to be coming from people in our age group. So the song itself, I like listen to that song. I'm like, it does take you back, doesn't it? Like it's a song that you can connect with. It's got nostalgia. We know how important nostalgia is when it comes to developing these creative marketing campaigns. I think they've done some really smart things. There's just something that is a bit of a miss. Like the most random bit, I just find it. Why is he just randomly opening a present on his own? Like, it's like so weird, such a small part of it. But I'm like, why is he just randomly opening the present? Like, don't you all sit down and, I don't know, do people do that? Maybe I'm missing a thing at Christmas, but like, we all like sit down and open our presents together as like a thing. Yeah. Like, you don't just like snatch one from under the tree and just slyly open it on your, that whole bit just like naffed me off.
I hadn't thought about that.
Well, there you go. You watch it again and it'll annoy you now.
But the interesting thing is, everyone's got a view, right? Everyone's talking about it. So why is that? It's because great ads have always been ones that emotionally do something to you, whether it makes you laugh, cry, get frustrated, confused, whatever it is. Like that emotional response to it is so important, because that is what great ads do, right? They move you in some way.
Yeah.
Whereas 99% of ads are just vanilla, right? They just pass you by, and that's unfortunately that's what we're kind of used to. So when we do see a good one, you think about it, right? It's something to discuss. I mean, but back in 2000, we'd all remember great ads. The Cadbury's Gorilla ad, right? The whole sort of those things were things that you talked about. I mean, when was the last time you talked about an ad? And if you weren't in the advertising industry, you would never talk about ads, right? No. But people do talk about ads when they're emotionally, I think, very, very evocative. What
do you think, John? Because for me, in the industry of advertising, the John Lewis Christmas ad has always been a thing. Well, has it always been a thing? There's definitely feels like it's always been a thing.
Yeah.
But why do you think how and why have they managed to capture all of our attention? Because it isn't just us in the world of marketing, advertising that know that John Lewis ad is a thing. Like what? I mean, I know they've dialed into emotion, but it's almost more than that, isn't it? They've created it like such a sense of importance around.
They've created an event, right? They've created an event around the release of their TV ad, right? Which is pretty cool. So they do it every year.
Yeah.
You know it's coming. There's a lot of anticipation about it, and you want to talk about it, right? You want to have a view on it. So I think it's all of those things. It's
the emotion. You're right, though. Every single
you think about all the John Lewis ads that we've seen. They're all
favorite John Lewis ad. There you go. Big question. I'm putting you on the spot here. I've got one.
Is it the moon one?
No.
Oh, okay.
We discussed it the other day. The dogs jumping on the when the dogs go outside and have fun on the trampoline and jumping up and down. But maybe that's because I love dogs. See, there's so many good ones. They have done really, really well. Did they do an Elton John one? They did an Elton one. That's quite recent.
So,
that one really sort of rings in my memory. But they do, they do stand out. Okay, different question. I'm going to keep going with this Christmas theme. And then we're going to unpack why they're good. Favorite Christmas ad this year?
Waitrose.
Yes. I feel like Waitrose have beaten John Lewis. And I mean, obviously, just love Kieran. I mean, there's so many. I mean, we can definitely unpack the smart things that they've done.
Yeah.
But if you guys haven't seen the Waitrose ad, go and watch it. It's with Keira Knightley and what's his name, Joe, who's just been on Traitors. Also, really brilliant. Bloody smart.
Yeah.
But it's a movie in its own right.
Yeah.
When I watch it, I'm like, this is so long, but I really want it to keep watching it. And I kind of want it to be a movie. I want it to be longer because it's got to be one of the longest Christmas ads in ages as well. It is it is a little mini movie.
It's a full break.
Yeah. But tell me, is it a full break? How long do you reckon it is? 3-4 minutes?
I think it's about 3 minutes.
Yeah, it's got to be.
Yeah.
Which is much longer than anyone would typically recommend to run an ad for, right? Yeah. Because it's too long.
Well, if it's 3 minutes of utter shit.
So what have they done right? Well, everything.
Well, I think they lucked out with Joe, can't remember his second name, being in Traitors.
Yes, I'm going to find his name. You keep going, or I'm going to look for his name.
That was like brilliant timing. It's just, again, it's the whole emotional thing, right? You're hooked totally from the beginning.
Yeah.
And it's funny. It's there's moments where where you feel sad, when the brother answers the door and you can just see him crestfallen, right? He's spent all his time making this pie and the brother answers the door and he obviously assumes it's her boyfriend, husband, whatever. And then you get the big, finish at the end, which is brilliant. But it's
he gets to
I think what's when you've got longer form content, it's not a rush. It's like some of the, if you think about finance ads where you've got 10 seconds to rush out all the T's and C's at the end and someone talks really, really quickly, right? That's what ads feel like a lot. Whereas these ones and the John Lewis one is the same, right? It's paced. It's, you have time to kind of sink into it a bit, don't you? And really indulge yourself and enjoy. And it's not rushed. And that's the difference, right? Because they just know that letting people in and find their way into the content is so important. And you don't get that luxury with most ads, because most ads are buy this, buy that, click on the QR code, phone this number. It's bang, bang, bang. Whereas this is, it's there is no buy. There is no, you've got to.
Yeah, it's very subtle, isn't it?
Totally subtle.
He just is like, he's cooking, basically. It's really beautifully done. It is an example of a fantastic advert. His name, by the way, is Joe Wilkinson.
And he is famous for being a
English comedian, actor and songwriter.
Okay.
Began his comedy career in 2004 and he supported Alan Carr. Who knew that? He won the Hackney Empire New Act of the Year. I recognise him from Countdown. Yeah, that's it. He began appearing on 8 out of 10 Cats and Countdown in about 2012 as Rachel Riley's assistant, who's the very incredibly clever woman who hosts, well, not hosts, but does all the
the maths stuff.
Clever maths and English stuff. So yeah, but I think really smart. There's lots in terms of the smart things they've done. They've tied into, of course, there's the relevance of Keira Knightley going back to Love Actually and the way that he goes up to the door. Like there's so many like cute moments. The fact that we've all joked, I'm sure, like when you've had a bad breakup, like and his ex said, the only person that you can go out with is after me is Keira Knightley, and then he goes up. But we've all said that at some point in our lives, hopefully. All wanted to like date a celebrity that we're upset. Like, so there's so many. I mean, that's just 2 examples, but there's so many really smart things it dials into. So it's exciting.
Yeah.
Right, what's next for TV? So you recently did a talk for me, thank you very much, at Marketing the Madness Live, which was amazing, called TV is Dead.
Yes.
But really saying that TV isn't dead. With that in mind and some of the things that we've just discussed, what is the future of TV? Because we do have so much more choice. We don't have to watch the ads. My daughter's always like, skip the ads. Like, tell me, like, how do we get cut through in TV and is TV dead?
Yeah, well, I think TV isn't dead, and I'm pretty sure it was TV is dead ?
Yes, it was ?
or is TV dead? No,
it's definitely not dead.
Definitely not dead. But there was a period, 10-ish years ago, where I think people were concluding that because digital had just come out like a freight train and the walled gardens were just hoovering up money, and advertisers were pushing more and more money into social, particularly, and also into search. That money had to come from somewhere. Where would it come from? And TV's expensive, so take it out of TV and put it into these walled gardens. So I think there was a lot of speculation that TV was in decline. And also because people were watching less TV because they were spending more time online, particularly younger audiences, doom scrolling, and that's where they're
screening.
Right. So I think that all made sense. And then businesses like Netflix, came about. The streaming platforms suddenly emerged, and I think COVID was a real accelerator for this, right? Because it massively changed people's habits in quite a short period of time, and so households were fine to add a couple more subscriptions, because I think they're it's like somewhere between like £8 a month and £11 a month, something like that. Add one of those or 2 of those, and when you're not going out because the government's saying you can't go out unless, of course, you work in the government, in which case you can just get pissed and have parties all day long. But for most people, they couldn't go out, so they weren't spending their money. So spend it on content, right? Because there's only so many online quizzes that you could have with your friends and families. So that was a real, sort of moment in time. And so that definitely changed the viewing habits of lots and lots of people. And the other thing is that, when you look at the amount of money that Apple, Netflix, Prime spend on content, relative to, say, how much money ITV can afford to spend on their content, I mean, it dwarfs it. It's huge amounts of money. And this is on... Most of it is TV series. Most of it's, 8-episode, 12-episode series, studio quality, big budgets. I think the budget for Severance was something like $1 million per episode. And that's huge amounts of money. So you're creating, all of a sudden, you've got this huge growth in content. Initially, because it was all SVOD, so subscription based, the eyeballs were all moving there, but the ad dollars couldn't move there because there's nowhere to advertise, right? So you've got things around the edges like sponsorships or product placement, but you haven't got sort of a vehicle for mainstream advertising. So the eyeballs were all moving towards this type of content, but the advertisers couldn't, which is why there's been a real lag in it. And then, of course, you start to see a slowdown in subscriptions because people worry about how much they're spending each month on content. So, Amazon,
so many you've got to have now.
Well,
Amazon, Disney, like obviously the main one, Netflix, Apple, like it's like 40 quid a month, like £10 each, whatever. It's like just to go on those 4.
Right. So what they then did, so Netflix then introduced an ad tier. So I think it's right that I think Netflix took the view that they would introduce an ad tier, and if you wanted to not have ads, you had to pay more. Right, so you paid more not to have the ads.
Yes.
Whereas Prime initially just put ads into Prime, and whatever you were paying for it is what you got, but you got it with ads.
Yeah.
So they took sort of 2 different ways of doing it, but that carried the growth, right? Because people were more, there's a balance between how much they're prepared to pay for amazing content and the trade-off, or the value exchange is, and I'll watch the ads because in return I get all this fantastic content. So that was that's the trade-off, that's the balance, and it means that the growth continues. And then you've got things like fast channels. So you've got broadcasters sitting on massive archives of amazing content. So if you're a person in their late 40s, early 50s, then you might have been brought up watching Minder and Bergerac and stuff like this, Starsky and Hutch, right?
I've seen much of them.
Obviously, but all of that content has suddenly been re-released into into the ecosystem. So you've got broadcasters with tons and tons of amazing old archive content that they're releasing on as fast channels. So if you look on Sky, for example, you can look at ITV have a quiz channel. There's channels that are labeled for specific types of content, and this is all old content that's being remonetized.
Yeah.
So you've got more and more content that's free for consumers to watch, and the trade-off, of course, is that it will contain ads because it's advertiser-funded. So all of a sudden, you've got more eyeballs in this space, but more and more opportunities for advertisers to advertise to these audiences. And I think it's right now that the balance between, if you look at sort of the total sum of all the TV content that we watch now versus 15, 20 years ago when we had, BBC dominance. So it was really ITV, Channel 4, Channel 5 in the UK. Now, more of the content we watch contains ads than it did back in the day because it's more fragmented, but more of that fragmentation is ad-funded content. So there's more opportunities, and I think that will increase. That whole sort of shift to advertiser-funded content will only increase. And I think people are generally cool with the concept, right? The value exchange is fine. Where it falls down invariably is what goes in those ad breaks, right? Because we've all had those experiences where it's pretty bad.
Yeah. I mean, some ads, I don't know who is even signing them off. There's some absolutely atrocious ones. Yeah. And often it's the more like localized content, isn't it? But that was actually going to be one of my next questions is obviously AI, personalized content. It's something that is hitting us, not just in the world of TV, across every single channel, from the social channels to within, owned websites to everything in between. Everything feels like it is supposed to be more relevant to me because of AI. Now, sometimes that misses a huge mark. So, when I'm getting some content, sometimes it really doesn't. Sometimes it's really good, and it's like quite good. Like Canva, great. Like, especially I think podcast sponsorship is getting really smart because they know, okay, people that are listening to this podcast are likely to be interested in this subject, therefore, and they're doing some really cool, fun, creative stuff. But where do you see things going over the next few years when it comes to all of this, in the world of advertising? Because we now have what should be much smarter insights and data because of AI.
Yeah. So I think we could have a whole podcast on this.
Yeah, just on this subject
alone.
Yeah.
I think that what happened with digital and that sort of race to the bottom from a creative perspective, in some ways has started how people think about addressable TV. But there are some massive differences, right? So if you're on a mobile device, it's a one-to-one relationship, right? The advertising platforms, and particularly the walled gardens, know an awful lot about you because you traded your data to them either knowingly or unknowingly, and so they can serve ads to you that are hyper targeted, and some of it's good and useful, and a lot of it isn't, right? But it's very, very specific. Whereas TV is still a one-to-many medium. When you watch TV, you're generally watching it on a big screen in your biggest room in the house, and you're normally watching it with other people, right? It's shared viewing. It's a household experience rather than a single person experience. So if you try and target people with personalized ads in a household environment, by definition, like, you're going to get it wrong.
Yeah.
Right? Because someone in the room, it's not going to be relevant for. And often all the people in the room, it's not relevant for because, there are no third-party cookies in CTV, so you have to use different ways to try and figure out what the composition of the household is. And so fundamentally, it's an entirely different thing, right? You can't target in the same way that you do on a mobile device or a laptop, because that one-to-one relationship is very different from the household relationship. But at the moment, that doesn't really feed through into the creative side of it, right? Because either clients will take an existing TV ad, right, and run that across CTV, which runs the risk that you lose a lot of relevance, right? So one of the big differences between linear TV and CTV is that whole sort of addressability thing, right? So there are data signals that you get on CTV that you'll never get on linear TV. So linear TV, that's why you still have broad audiences, right? The idea that a 16 to 34-year-old man looks and has the same life stages, whether they're 16 or 34, is a nonsense, right? It's crazy. But that's how we've been used to sort of grouping audiences and audience definitions. If you take that into the addressable space and into the digital space, right? We know a lot more about people, about their viewing habits, their aspirations, the kind of stuff they watch, when they watch it. So we could be a lot more relevant in the ads that we show, and a lot of the technology is there to do it. But if you rely on a fairly broad linear TV ad, you run the risk of being irrelevant. And if you rely on a social media or hyper targeted ad, you run the risk of being irrelevant, right? Because it's too narrow. So it's something between those two things that I think is where we will start to see more and more growth, more and more care over the creative execution, because the moments, right, those TV moments are massive.
Yeah.
You think about it, you're watching a show on Netflix, you're going to get ads, you can't skip them, you're going to have to watch them, right? So if that ad is poorly targeted or not relevant to you, two things are going to happen. One, you either exit the room because you just don't want to watch it, or you start to form a really bad impression of that advertiser. And if that advertiser is one that you see for the next 4 ad breaks every single time, that sort of frustration and poor experience becomes exponentially more adversely powerful.
Yeah.
Whereas if it was right, if it was an ad that was relevant and motivated you, if you're watching a program on, I don't know, it escapes, winter escapes in the sun.
Yeah,
right?
Of course.
Because your search history says at the moment you're looking for somewhere to go in winter for a long weekend or something, and you get shown an ad for the co-op cremation service in that content. That's you might be perfect
you never
demographically,
know,
right? Because it might be something that that you're worried about or dealing with. But it's it's
the wrong moment.
It's the wrong type of message. So there is there is a massive disconnect between what we know about the content of the shows that are now available, when those ad breaks get scheduled, what we know about the audience types that watch those particular pieces of content, and then what's the composition of the ad itself, right? If you get all of those 3 things right, that is holistically really, really powerful. So trying to sort of triangulate all of those things, I think, is where the big opportunity exists, right? But at the moment, we know very little about the ad copy itself because that's not on a consistent taxonomy. We know quite a lot about the content because the content producers invariably go into quite a lot of detail in terms of applying metadata to the content and the way that content is analyzed. On the buy side, you rely on signals from the sales side, say this is what the content is, and the more the sales side shows the buy side the composition, the more the buy side can make better decisions based on audiences or preferences. But again, even if you get that bit right and you still show the co-op cremation ad, it's still going to be wrong, right? So there's so many moving parts in this, and each of those stakeholders will have their own agendas. The content owners, on the one hand, they want to push as much of that content into the open environment as possible. It needs to be consistently tagged so that as a viewer, if I put I want to watch an inspirational funny film into my search engine on my on my UI, then the more data you've got on the content side of it, the more likely it is to find me something that I'm going to watch, right? Because I want to stop this whole spending 10 minutes scrolling through screens trying to find something to watch, right? Because the amount of time that we all waste on trying to find something to watch, which is bizarre when you consider how much stuff there is to watch. But there's so much supply that almost trying to find out what's right and what's out there is incredibly hard. So if you can make that bit better and then pass those signals into the buy side of it so that the buy side can make better decisions about what to buy and what not only what types of content, but maybe even what episode to watch, right? Or what point in an episode to watch, because technically all of that is possible, right? It exists, but there isn't any sort of conformity between the buy side, the sell side, and then the content, advertising content composition side to do that. But I think that's where it will go. So it's a very long answer.
No, I think
that's where it will go. And I think the keywords for me, and you mentioned it, are relevance rather than personalisation, because personalisation works kind of fine on a mobile device, but doesn't really work on a household level. So making things relevant means it's got to be broad enough to be appealing to, different cohorts, but tight enough for it not to feel irrelevant and to feel, badly targeted. So that I think that's the balance that you've got to get right, and we're nowhere near it.
No, we're not. It's getting more and more complex. The only way is, like you said earlier, I can't remember the word that you used, so I'm just going to give an example, but is when the show is relevant. So it's very easy to think about the kind of content that you might, promote, or the kind of products that you might promote in Bake Off. Yeah. Because most of the people watching are interested in baking, or if they're not, they're enjoying the show and they might try baking because they're watching the show and that's inspired them to do so. So it's very easy to kind of think about the kind of products that you might advertise, something like that. Same almost. And I think this has been one of the shows that has, well, I don't even know the words to use here, Jason, so I'm going to get it wrong. Like, I don't know, like standard normal TV, like Love Island. I'm just going to say, like, people have to watch that.
Is that normal TV?
Well, no, probably not. Do you watch Love Island?
No, I don't.
No, my daughter made me get into it, and now I'm stupidly obsessed. But I think Love Island's a good example of you have to watch it in the moment. A bit like a TV show that kicked off last night. To date stamp this, it is, whatever date it is, November the 17th. Last night, I'm a Celebrity kicked off again. Like, you have to watch that in real time. Like, you don't have a choice because it's live, it's happening in the moment. Like, you if you're voting or you're getting involved in whatever way, like it's real time TV. Is there a word for that? Real time TV? We'll give it that name. And that kind of advertising I also find really smart. Like, I think Love Island have done a very good job at choosing the right, because so many shows get the most obvious things wrong and just take the money, right? They're not truly thinking about who the right partners are. So we're all, in this kind of, we watch Love Island because it's, I don't know, a bit naff and fun people watching. But, it's very much based around the fashion and things. So having eBay in a world where we're a lot more conscious, circular fashion is a thing. We've all seen the huge rise of vintage. eBay sponsoring and having their wardrobes all, secondhand from eBay or whatever it is. Smart. There's obvious like tie-ins with that, and they sponsor the show, they provide the clothes. It feels like a nice narrative. Like that, I think that there's certain shows that you can do that with, and certain moments that you can do that with. But otherwise, it can, if someone's watching, I don't know, we were talking about Trigger Point, for instance, like, where they could be anyone interested in anything. And we ain't going to be start selling bombs, hopefully, anytime soon. But do you know what I mean? Like, that's a very wide demographic for an equally popular show. Well, maybe not quite as popular as Love Island. Why Love Island is so popular, who knows? But it is interesting, isn't it? I think the world of advertising is very complex and ever changing, and AI and the data that we're able to collect now does solve some of the problems, but it also introduces new problems as well.
Definitely.
So there are lots of different partners you can work with, a bit like me, to kind of help you navigate where to go when it comes to advertising or go-to-market strategies. I don't know, it feels that there's been a real shift to me over the past few years with, there's the big, holding company agency groups that we all know, love to hate sometimes. And then there's also lots of independents. Have you seen a shift? I feel like certainly since COVID, the independent agencies have had a bit of a opportunity, and because maybe traditionally the larger, especially like in the world that we, I guess, or I used to work more, and you probably do more so now, media agencies, they're big beasts. There's lots of time. They're not able always to make the decisions as quickly as you need them to be made, because in today's AI-led world, things change so quickly. So my kind of view, personally, is when you're trying to come up with these ideas, these strategies, what you need to do, often the independent agencies can help you move a lot more quickly. And I think there's been quite a shift change over the last few years. I'm not saying that the larger agencies are dead, because actually that's where most of my clients are. But I do feel like they're having to change a lot, because more often bigger businesses are choosing to work with smaller agencies because they give them the agility that the biggers can't. I don't know. Over to you for your opinion.
Your relationship with your clients, what you spend most of your time trying to do with them is to grow their business, right? Could be growing the number of customers, could be growing the number of times that customers buy stuff, could be growing the basket size. Whatever it is, it's all growth driven. And if that became the currency, if it was all about growth, I'll work with you, and if you can help me grow my business by 20% next year, I'll give you 20% of the upside that you generate for me. Yeah. That's interesting, right? Yeah. That's something that you could easily decide to do.
Yeah.
Whereas for Holdco, it's very hard to do that because that's changing everything. So I think independent agencies can really benefit from that. And that's where I think technology is a massive enabler, accelerator, working with partners that can deliver technological solutions easily, quickly, scaled, so that you don't have to, so that you can, I think agencies that can spend more time on strategy, spending time with the clients, really getting under the skin of what the challenges are, how can we solve them, what's the best technology solutions in the market that can help solve that specific client, rather than we've got our own tech, we'll just sell you ours because it's the best.
Yeah.
Is it really?
Yeah.
So I think you're right. I think it is changing, and I think for independent agencies, we're going through a period where they can compete in a very different way. They can operate in a very different way, and I think the level of service and capability that independent agencies can now offer is really, really interesting, and that's why I think you see clients starting to move across. And I think you look in almost every market globally, it's happening.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it feels like there has been a real movement in this space, just because, like you said, we're able to be a little bit more human and real. There are no layers of sign off. Well, there are layers of sign off, but there's much less layers of sign off. You can actually speak a bit more honestly. There are less guardrails. So, for instance, for me, and I get to interview some amazing, agency people, creative leaders, brand leaders. The bigger the brand, the more rounds of sign off this podcast has to go through, and that we're not allowed to release. When it's an independent, we can say what we want within reason. Like we're allowed to authentically. I can say what the hell I like on this podcast, and when I guest on other people's podcasts. But a lot of big companies, and therefore the same with bigger agencies, they can't. They've got lots of guardrails. It has to go through their comms team. So I think if you're looking for trust, and then in a world of AI and technology, and I do think some of the bigger companies, they need to be braver if they want to keep up. They've got to let their people have a voice. They've got to stop letting the comms teams cut what they're saying. Trust is hard to earn, and you're not going to earn it by working with an agency where you kind of know it's taken them age. Like you can't even get content out the door. Like I have been lucky or unlucky enough to work with some really big agencies in my time, and they kill the tone of voice in the content. Because they want it to sound like the business, not the person. But actually people want to connect with people, not with businesses. So I think we're in an interesting space where a lot of the larger businesses need to quite quickly change how they operate in order to let their people have more authentic voices, because otherwise I think there's going to be some trouble ahead.
Yeah, and I think that the trust piece is key, right? I think clients want to feel that the agencies and the partners that they work with have their best interests at heart.
Yeah.
And I think there's always a suspicion as you get bigger and bigger and bigger that shifts towards your own company's best interests. And then the clients are sort of unknowingly or unwittingly helping you drive your agenda rather than you helping them drive their agenda. And I think that's the fundamental difference, right? You look at things like Principal Media. Principal Media, there are clients who will say, Principal Media works perfectly for me because I get everything that I used to get at a much cheaper price, and I'm happy with that. I don't need to know where it's come from, what you paid for it. All I need to worry about is what am I paying for it. And if it's less than it was last year, I'm happy, right? And that's fine. There'll be clients that are happy with that, but there's a ton of clients that aren't happy with that because they want transparency, but they also want to know that, you know, that they're the most important people in the room.
Yeah.
Right? It's their business that you worry about. It's their growth that you're trying to drive rather than your own. And I think that's, you know, you're right. You know, trust takes a long time to build and can be smashed apart in seconds.
Yeah.
And I think that's, you know, that's where we are. But I think it's for independent agencies, for a lot of technology partners, it's really exciting times because there's an awful lot going on. There's a lot of expertise and capability that is much more readily available, that can make a lot of difference, that can do a lot of the heavy lifting, so that, you know, you spend more time strategically with your customers, figuring out how you can both grow.
Yeah.
And I think that's what it comes down to.
Make it more freaking human.
Yeah, make it more fun.
Yeah, thank you for literally letting me end the podcast on my motto, which is true. It's like about connecting the humans. So, Jason, a huge thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming on. I needed to get you on because I realised at the Marketing the Madness event, I was like, previous podcast guest, and I was like, I need to get Jason on now. Yeah. So we've made it happen.
I just need to write a book now.
I know, yeah, that me too. Let's both write a book. I mean, God, I don't know. There could be a lot of topics in mine. Big thank you for coming on. Thank you for travelling down to see me.
That's
and
okay.
yeah, excited to see what comes next.
Yes.